Welcome, Internet, to the second episode of Fighting the Void. I am Eric, and I am, well, you know what? This intro sucks, so I'm going to have to chop this. And I instantly technically difficulted myself. Good thing we're not live.
Right?
Blooper reel. Okay, I'm going to start over. Deep breath. Welcome, Internet, to the second episode of Fighting the Void, here on iTunes and SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts at. I am Eric, and if you have missed the first episode, you can get that now on iTunes, because guess what? It's up there. It took a little while, but it's there. We're live, and it's a wonderful thing. And today, the subject is going to be a little heavier than the last one, where we talked about SJWs and their ability to undermine their own arguments in popular TV shows. Today, I am joined by my good friend from Twitter, Crystal, to talk about the state of Martin Luther King's dream of a colorblind society. Now, quick little background here. I had been thinking about doing a podcast similar to this for a long time. I don't know, probably like 2 years. This has been in the back of my mind. And I kind of went back and forth to get close, back, anyway. And Crystal here, she wrote a little thing on the just past Martin Luther King Day here in 2018 that it gave me the last push over the edge that I needed to get started. So, Crystal, care to share with the folks what it is that you wrote, or at least the gist of it, that finally got me off my butt and into the digital realm here?
Well, first off, I'm glad that I'm honored that I was your final push into doing this. I'm honored. And so basically what I wrote is how Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream was, we didn't look at each other based off of our skin color. We didn't look at each other as, oh, you're a white man, I'm a white woman, and there's black men or anything like that. His dream and his goal was to get society to a place where we saw each other as individuals. And when I look around, I see many people not really following in that dream. And when Martin Luther King Jr. Day came around, I was just getting so frustrated. I was seeing many people talk about his dream, but I was also seeing many people behave that went in a way that went against it. And I basically did a thread about how we're going against his dream, and we're basically fulfilling the prophecy of an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, which comes from Gandhi, that based on some of the behavior I've seen of people wanting to treat others based on skin color for what people of the same skin color did in the past. And that's basically what the whole thread discussed.
That actually is a perfect nutshell of what our situation is. And what got me about that, because what Crystal says in and of itself is not surprising so much. Like I said, it just as a statement, it's like, yes, this is probably a lament that you hear frequently. But what got me about it was good. This is coming from the next generation that's going to be sort of taking the reins of power in a few years. Crystal's part of the generation that's going through college right now and everything, and in 10 and 20 years is going to start to climb the social and corporate ladder. And they're the ones who are going to be guiding policy and the economy and everything in my old age. And seeing the fact that there was someone, and presumably many more, of that younger generation that recognize this, that it's not just us old farts that can see it, that see this and lament the apparent death, the fact that Martin Luther King's dream is on life support. They see that and recognize it as a horrible, horrible thing and a bad sign of where we could conceivably go as a country. So yeah, that's what really got me about this. And it's, again, it was the last push. It's like, okay, there's hope out there. There's more than, there's a possibility to do more than just rage against the machine, if you will. There's a chance of actually finding and harnessing something that's already out there and doing yes. Go ahead.
There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not necessarily a train. It could actually be salvation.
It doesn't have to be a train, and we can actually hope to find those people and knit them together into some sort of coherent, opposition, if you will, to the current trend of things. And really quickly, if you hear a bunch of noise that might sound like a train, that's my kids running around upstairs. I, as usual, recorded in my basement dungeon. So yeah, if you hear wild stomping and if you hear screaming at any point during this podcast, probably no one is no one is getting hurt.
That's the screaming.
Yes, if they're screaming, hopefully the kids are okay.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yes.
No.
They're all upstairs watching Coco right now with my wife, so that'll probably be fine.
Yeah.
But all right, so in seeing the fact that there is this thread out there that again could be an opposition, and by opposition I don't mean like we all gather together in militias and go out there necessarily and engage in some sort of violent protest, finding the people that we disagree with and stopping their faces in, a la Antifa. I'm not saying anything remotely like that. I'm saying the same thing that Martin Luther King did, which, after he talked about things like the fierce urgency of now and the need to not turn back, to keep pushing, to not wait for the social zeitgeist to turn on its own, but to move that social zeitgeist. He also said right after that, he's like, but I mean peacefully. I mean protest, right? By all means, stage these peaceful protests that will lodge in the public consciousness and will shift the zeitgeist, but you don't never go to violence. He specifically says, in fact, here's a quote right from the speech: "In the process of gaining a rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred." And it's the same thing. The people that have forgotten this dream, and those of us who would resist that trend, we can't fall prey to the same thing.
People already have. I mean, like you mentioned, Antifa. They go in with the intent to fight physically, not just battle the bad ideas. They want to go in and actually attack, and that's not a good thing to normalize. And along with, I don't know if you've heard before of punch a Nazi simply for them being a Nazi. Now I'm gonna say right off the bat, I strongly dislike Nazis. Yeah. Okay, I've had older generations of family affected by the Nazis, but going up and just randomly punching someone who you call a Nazi, which Nazi is also a word thrown around, so that's not scary to think anyone can be a Nazi and people are saying go punch a Nazi. No, yeah. You're not only stooping to a level you shouldn't be stooping to, you're also weakening your own argument, because no one wants to side with someone whose instinct is just to start fights. That's not a side you want to be on.
Right. I love how they justified the punch a Nazi thing kind of when Antifa got started right after the 2016 election. Well, that's not when Antifa got started. That's when Antifa became something that everybody knew.
Yeah.
they've actually been around a very long time, but they sort of bubbled up above the surface right after the 2016 election, and the whole thing to justify the punch a Nazi, which that very quickly became anyone to the right of Bernie Sanders, which is that boggles my mind. But anyway, it was like, well, Captain America punched Nazis. Yeah, it was called World War II. You see, you see any world wars going on right now? Are there? I mean, are there literally Nazis marching in the streets? Are there? I don't know. Somebody's gonna say Charlottesville. I know. And you know what? There were more, from what I hear anyway. There was more media there. There were more counter protesters than there were actual Nazis there. It's like, you're making your own issue. I'm sorry, but it literally, and regardless, that's one time, people. And by all means, counter protest them, please. I don't want any Nazis either.
Oh yeah, neither do I. Like I think the world would be a better place if there were zero Nazis.
Yes, I think we can safely say that. But that doesn't mean somebody who has a ideological leaning that way needs to be
punched in the face.
It doesn't need to be punched in the face at the first opportunity.
Yeah,
because that is how you will and that's how the Nazis gained power in the first place. You had the you had the Nazi Party going up against the more extreme communists and everything, and the police of the Weimar Republic and everything. They basically ignored it. They let the communists beat up on a bunch of people who wound up siding with the Nazis because, well, I don't know if they're the good guys or not, but at least they're fighting these guys who are beating me up. Yeah. So by going and punching Nazis and then or punching anyone that you consider a Nazi, which again is anyone to the right of Bernie Sanders, for crying out, all of a sudden Kanye West is the freaking member of the KKK. Give me a break, people. Are you in? No, that's a rhetorical question. Yes, you're insane if you think that. Anyway,
I think is a prime example of what Martin Luther King Jr. was trying to avoid, the saying "Don't stoop to violence," because Charlottesville. Yes. I'm trying to remember if there was any after Charlottesville that was really bad, but as far as I know, Charlottesville was bad. It was one of the most violent encounters ever between protesters, and it's like that's not something you want, and you don't want that as part of your political discourse.
No, and it is fair to say that's the only one where anyone has actually died as a result of direct result of the protest. And it was I don't know if he's specifically a Nazi, but a guy who it wasn't an Antifa guy who ran somebody over with a car. It was somebody. It was one of the tiki torch carriers who ran someone over with a car. And she was actually one of the counter protesters. So, obviously, we've got to say that Antifa, fortunately, to anyone's knowledge, has not succeeded in killing anyone yet. So that's good.
Yeah.
But it's not for lack of trying, people.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've gotten ahead of ourselves a little bit.
Yeah. Like a freight train right to like the nitty gritty stuff, like. Oh, let's pull back.
Yes. Exactly. Let's reel this back a little bit. And well, how would you, again, how to sort of reset ourselves, how would you sort of characterize Martin Luther King's dream and what he would hope to see today? And where did we screw that up?
Well, for one, he'd want everyone just, no matter what skin color, to be equal under the eyes of the law. That's the first thing. And then the second thing would be to not to look at each other based on skin color, as I've mentioned before. Look at each other as instead of looking at you as a white man, look at you as Eric or Ginger, as I call you.
Right.
And that's, I don't know if you have anything to add, but that's the two main things I can think of to summarize his dream as. Everyone equal under the eyes of the law and the government, and everyone looking at each other as individuals. So there's the more government level of equality and colorblindness, and then there's the societal, interpersonal level of colorblindness.
Sort of the exact opposite of the identity politics that we have today.
Exactly. If you want something that epitomizes the exact opposite of Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream, it's identity politics, which is, if you don't know what identity politics is, it's basically basing your politics on the identity of others. Like, for example, if you're a man, you can't have an opinion on abortion, or if you're, what's another good example? Or if you're X skin color, you can't have an opinion on something that affects majority Y.
Right.
It's the basic formula of identity politics. If you are X, you can't have an opinion on something that majority affects Y, which is not how it should work. If equality were, if everyone valued equality, everyone would be able to have an opinion on something, on different political issues.
Yeah, I was actually thinking a lot about that earlier today, about how that whole understanding another person's experience works. And it's fair to say, on an individual level, like, I may not be able to understand. Actually, a good example that comes up every now and then is actually depression. I don't understand depression the way somebody who has like legit clinical depression. I don't understand that as they understand it. That's 100% fair to say. I will take. You're like, you just don't get it. You know what? You're right. I don't. But I do get that it sucks. I do get that it's bad. I don't feel it the same way, but I can't understand the basic. I'm perfectly capable of understanding the parameters of it, and can even understand ways to help or hurt with it, depending. And I think that's where the difference is. It's not like, see, what I'm saying is, it's true that I can't understand a particular individual's experience the way they experience it. That's fair. But I can understand the basic parameters and everything that do affect the whole group. Whereas identity politics would say, no, you're not part of group A. Therefore, you can't even begin to comprehend anything at all about it. Because I didn't grow up in a ghetto, I can't have any opinion on what exists within said ghetto and how best to deal with it. And if you flip it around, somebody who grew up in a ghetto has no business telling me anything about growing up in small town suburbia.
Yeah. If you were to go based on their rules, that's exactly how it would work. And in a way, it's like segregating each other, which is, again, the exact opposite of what Martin Luther King Jr. wanted. His whole purpose was to fight against segregation. That people who are white and black and any other color can walk down the street together with ease, and it'd be
not weird.
Yeah.
it just be that here's Jeff or Steve or Crystal or whoever.
Yeah.
Or it's exactly. It shouldn't be in and of itself something difficult, something controversial. it should just be the way that it should just be the way that it is. But unfortunately, things aren't that way. Now, I noticed years ago, years ago, while reading something or another for school, I don't remember exactly what, but it doesn't matter. What it was talking about that caught my mind, that caught my interest, was how people actually do tend to self-segregate. It was specifically referring to college campuses, oddly enough, and talking about how, yeah, you know what, the Asian kids usually go off and sit with the Asian kids. The black kids usually go off and sit with the black kids. The white kids usually go off and sit with the white kids. It's normal, and that in and of itself is interesting. And what was interesting about the article as well is they were trying to figure out, at the time, they're trying to figure out, how do we break this up? How do we encourage them to not self-segregate? And I don't know. What do you think about this? This was the idea of trying to force complete integration is maybe part of the problem. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, and I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that either. I know forced integration is definitely not an answer. Anything forced is really not an answer. So, yeah, that is interesting, because
as we're talking, a parallel comes to mind with a big push lately to get women in STEM. And for those who don't know, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields. And what is interesting is that they're finding that the more a given society sort of shoves STEM down women's throats, the less they do it. Societies that don't have all these big women or other minorities in STEM programs, they actually, assuming they're a free and open society where, everyone does have the same basic rights, just like here, there's certainly nothing in the law preventing anyone from going into any field they want. So like Sweden, for example, they don't have these big pushes like this, but they've got a lot more women involved in STEM fields than we do. And it seems if we're not talking about race, we're talking about that.
Yeah.
It's like a reverse psychology.
Exactly. And I'm trying to remember what country is it. There's a country, speaking to the disparity between men and women in certain fields of jobs. There's one country where it's equality all across the board, and despite that, there's actually quite a huge disparity between what jobs men and women. And the countries with the most free choice, it seems, for people is where the higher disparities are seen.
Yeah,
but also very interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I find that it is interesting that we do certain groups, at least when it comes to gender, do tend to go one way or another. I don't know how much that really matters when it comes to race or not. My main point in bringing it up is forcing people into something tends to create the opposite effect.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't do what you want. So you try to force complete integration, not just equality under the law, not just interacting with everybody like individuals, but going like, no, that group over there's entirely too high of a ratio of Asians to Hispanics over there. We've got to even that. It's like, when you're getting that granular, honestly, if you're getting that granular, your problem is solved. You don't have a problem anymore. if that's where you're identifying your crisis, you don't actually have one.
Yeah. Well, forced integration probably doesn't work so much because it's taking away people's freedom of choice. Mm-hmm. And that's what really anyone wants out of life is the ability to choose what they do with it. And you tell them, this group is too much of this one race group. You need you to go here, and we're going to bring in these two, so it's more diverse. People don't react to that well, no matter what race color or anything. People don't react to that well because you're taking away their freedom of choice, not only really to associate with whoever they want to.
Exactly. Even if it's just through, just policies that seem soft and innocuous in and of themselves, but or not even policies, just messages. If there's one thing I hate, it's the constant. It's the constant lecturing from above on how you have to do this and how you should really do that and how you should rethink this and rethink. It's like, oh my gosh, just shut up. Especially if I was in school, I'd be like, you know what? I'm here for school, or alternatively for partying, depending on who you are and who's paying for your college.
Yeah.
If your parents are paying for your college, you might be there for partying. Or if the government's paying for your college, you're almost certainly there for partying. Anyway.
Yeah.
If you're paying for it yourself, you're going to school. Anyway, what are your thoughts though? How did we get here seemingly so quickly? Because it was not that long ago, really, that I had never heard the term identity politics, that Black Lives Matter wasn't a thing, that actually people that there was this middle ground between when there was the Los Angeles riots and the rise of Black Lives Matter. There was this period of time somewhere in between there where things seemed pretty normal, where it was maybe we hadn't 100% reached Martin Luther King's dream, but kind of felt like we were like 90% of the way there. Maybe that's because of where I grew up. Maybe that has to do with the fact that I went from to be perfectly honest, total Midwest white suburbia, where these things aren't even an issue at all, because there is no racial diversity where I'm from. I'll be honest. My hometown, there was none.
Now, see, my growing up was the exact opposite. I was a minority at my school.
Mm-hmm. Okay, really? Okay.
Yeah, because I grew up in Warren, Michigan, which was near Detroit, and so at my school, I was definitely the minority, which I didn't care.
Right.
Let's be clear. I didn't care. Like I didn't even notice it till all this identity politics started coming up, and it's like, huh.
That's exactly.
I don't know. Yeah. I grew up in this situation, and I didn't really pay that much attention to it because it's like, who cares? Who cares? But to answer a question of how we got here, because I felt the same thing too in school, that like we didn't. I didn't look at all my classmates and think, I'm surrounded by Black people. That's not how I viewed the world. I viewed it as, oh, I have this classmate named Asia, and I have this classmate named Mim, and I have this. They were different. They were people,
Right,
They didn't care what their skin color was. So, but to answer your question, it's multiple factors, I believe, and two come to mind right now. The first one, I mainly based on what I see on a smaller scale in individual people, and I've even seen this in myself sometimes. When people find out they've made a mistake, they, in the beginning, will overcorrect.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if part of the thing is that society discovered they were doing something wrong, which is segregation, slavery, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
They go to correct it, and then they overcorrect it. Well, now this group needs to pay for what happened in the past, because what happened in the past was wrong, and we need to correct that.
Mm-hmm.
So overcorrection is one of them. And the second one, which of course now slips my mind.
Well, while you're going, while you're trying to restart your train there,
Yeah.
you know, I went from I went from, you know, pretty much what 100% white Midwestern suburbia to the Navy, where there's racial diversity all over the place. You know, all of a sudden I'm in boot camp next to guys from all over the country, and it didn't really phase me. I was just like, okay, well, duh, I'm with joining the military. I'm with people from all over the place. Yeah, and that's kind of what you expect, and that in and of itself, the fact that people are we're from the South, we're from Los Angeles, we're from the, you know, East Coast, and everywhere in between. These were people that I was at boot camp with and studied with going through my training, and then later on the boat. They were just they were just the guys I was next to. You know, that cliche that you see in all the military movies. Although I was in the Navy, I wasn't in Delta Force. The chances of anyone basing a Black Hawk Down type movie off of anything that I could possibly have done in the Navy, 0. 100% 0. But you still get that a similar sense of camaraderie, even in a far less dangerous corner of the military, where it's like, you know what, as you know, the 300-pound black guy from Los Angeles that's sitting next to you, he's Joe. You know, or he's Patrick. You know, he's Patrick, and you know what his hobby is? He does software design in his spare time. That was literally what I cared about. That's it. And but yeah, somewhere along the way we screwed up. And you know, you're absolutely right about the overcorrection thing that people tend to do. We all have a tendency to overcompensate. And yeah, I think society as a whole tends to do these swings.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think the question is, during that kind of golden era, if you will, that we both kind of had a sense of, was that just while the pendulum was kind of actually still swinging kind of in the middle, or had we actually reached a good spot, but we were like, well, there's still all these social and economic disparities and that are out there, and we've been trying to solve them for so long. Did we just decide to blame it all on all those disparities that don't necessarily have anything to do with racism today? Perhaps you could, I'm sure, make a very good argument for blaming them on racism in the past, but you know, was it just like, you know what, we're going to blame all of that on racism, and that's what we're going to talk about, and that's the way to fix it all?
Actually, that actually helps me remember what the other point is, and it really matches what you just talked about, and that's a oversimplification of the problems facing different groups. Like, for example, the issue involving cops and blacks. The issue is so much more complex than anyone wants to talk about, and we're so focused on, we're too busy oversimplifying it. We're either saying it's completely systematic racism, or it's completely no, or the other side is too busy telling the other side that's not true, instead of actually discussing, okay, what are the factors that are contributing to this problem that we need to solve? Like, how can we fix this? What are the ways we can solve the problem and not just patch up the symptoms?
Yes, I agree with that 100%. I think a lot of the problem is there's one side that does seem to only be interested in just ranting about one thing that's the problem, and we'll never give any ground. Whereas, you know, if I wish I could remember the guy's name, the guy who was shot. I think it was I think it was up in Minnesota. I think it was last year. No. I'm sorry. I think Obama was still president, so it might have been 2016 yet. Guy up in Minnesota who was shot. It was like a traffic stop, and then his girlfriend and their 4-year-old kid was in the back of the car. He told the cop, "Hey, I've got a gun. I've got a concealed carry permit, so on and so forth." And the cop got jumpy, and he shot him right there. And the whole thing was videotape. Was the woman videotaped this whole thing and basically put it out on Facebook. So I mean, we could all see. And what I saw was a lot of conservatives going, "Oh my gosh, yeah, this is horrible." They're not jumping to racism, but obviously this was wrong. Obviously, this is not something that should have happened. And of course, I don't know anyone on the right that didn't jump right on Dylan Ruth, the guy who shot up that church in I think it was South Carolina. Everybody was more than willing to jump on that dude. And there was been other instances too. I remember one where a cop shot a dude who was in the back, who was running away. Again, that was all backed up with pretty good video footage where it's like, yep. And then I guess he was caught on tape bragging about it afterwards. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, this guy's a racist. this guy's a racist piece of garbage, and he needs to get put away. But he needs to get put away not for being a racist piece of garbage. He needs to get put away for shooting a dude in the back, who was, that's what you need. That's what he gets put away for, not for thought crime.
Yeah.
Well, we can ridicule him for the thought crime if you want. You can always do that.
Yeah.
Or better still, just argue and point out how silly it is. You can do that, but point it out with arguments, not just by going, "You're stupid."
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is with that long ramble there was that there is one side that is at least willing to go, and you know what? Yeah, there are, that's a problem over here. That's a problem over there. And here's some ways that you could actually, some things you could do that can solve these problems. Whereas there's another side that wants to be like, it's all racism. We just got to get rid of racism. It's like, no.
Yeah, and that's another big problem too, is that the conversation is mainly only taking place on one side.
Yeah.
Like I've seen many conservatives, and I've seen many who would call themselves like classical liberals.
Yes.
Talking to each other, doing panels, doing live streams, just getting together and talking about these issues and trying to figure out how can we solve these issues. But the other side is, or not even on the side, they're part of the conversation because it's their way or the highway. There's no possibility for them to be wrong.
Yeah, which this is a whole different conversation, but I always find that humorous because that's exactly what has been said to me being a conservative. That's what's said to me about being on the left. Is like, how can you be so absolutely sure you're right? What about, could you possibly be wrong? Or could the people you agree with possibly be wrong? It's like, but now it's like, they're the ones who are absolutely sure they're right, which I'll be honest, let's be honest, it was always that way. They were always 100% sure they were right. They just didn't say it. Now they do. So in a way, I appreciate the honesty. But I had a place. I had a switch in the track I was going to direct things to there a minute, but you know what? My train of thought got derailed.
Yeah.
I hate it when that happens. It happens all the time, and it doesn't get better. I'm just warning you right now.
Oh boy. Oh no. Well, that's not comforting at all.
But gosh, I'm looking at. I'm actually looking over here on my screen. Where I've got Martin Luther King's speech. I've got that up right now, and this classic picture taken from, I don't know, it might have been taken from on top of the Lincoln Memorial, looking out across the reflecting pool in the mall. It's just full of people. It's, you know, it's a beautiful sight. They're all here to hear this one man, this one brilliant, great man, whatever his other faults were. And yes, the man had faults. Because he's human. Again, another conversation. And they all came to hear him and to hear his message, to hear that this stupid racial divide that has plagued our nation almost, if not before we actually became a nation, that is still dividing us. And there is this moment of hope that maybe we'd be able to get past it. And we've had those times. We've had various periods in our history where it felt like maybe it had been done. You know, like it was pointed out recently, you know, with all the hype about Black Panther, you know, massive shifting gears here. Martin Luther King, superhero movies. You know, but you know, all the hype over Black Panther is like, oh, but you know, Black people have got a superhero now and all that. It's like, as someone pointed out, I forget I forgot what his name was, but a columnist who writes for Breitbart, John Nolte. He pointed out that, yeah, no one remember Blade? Does no one remember Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, back in the...
That reminds me of what happened with when I think Mona came out.
Moana?
There were a bunch of people. Actually, I shouldn't say a bunch of people. There's this one specific instance I remember. I can't remember what news source, however. I think it wasn't even a full-on news source. It was something like BuzzFeed. So you know you can't really take their word too concrete because they're like BuzzFeed.
Bring a few grains of salt with you, yes.
Yeah. But they basically made a tweet and posted. They posted an article and headlined the tweet with it, Mona the first of color. And many people pointed out, like, wait, have you forgotten about Pocahontas and Mulan and what was the one princess? The one with the frog.
Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember what her name is.
I have no idea. I honestly don't know.
That I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know. But many were pointing out how they were ignoring how many others we've had, so it's not like Mona's the first one.
Exactly. It's you know, right there's part of the issue. Nobody these days has got a memory that's longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like everything started happening like 5 minutes before someone was born. And it's like, give me a... What's that? You're not coming through well.
Well, I don't know if you saw the other day, I think it was yesterday, people were sharing this article or tweet someone made, or I think it was an article about how in the live action version of Aladdin, Jasmine is going to be a strong, independent female for finally. And many were pointing out how she was already a strong female in the cartoon. It's not like it's a new thing. She wasn't a damsel in distress. Now I don't fully remember Aladdin. I remember she wasn't like Princess Peach. Is what I'm saying.
No. She was not Princess Peach waiting for Mario to come and rescue her for the 19th time.
Quite a few Disney princesses weren't like Princess Peach. There's Mulan, a great example of a strong female character. Mm-hmm. There's Pocahontas was pretty strong in my opinion too.
Yes, honestly, the Disney princess hasn't been the Disney princess character in a very, very long time. You know, even going back to Ariel, yes, she swooned over some dude that she saw partying on a ship once. So, real women don't do that from time to time. Swoon over some cute guy that they saw. It's like, give me a break. Okay, yeah, they're probably not going to go and sell their voice so they can have legs and chase after them. I'll give you that one. But you know, you've got to condense things. So it's an hour and a half movie. You can only fit so much in. So you got to condense. You know, real life, she'd probably have to see him 4 or 5 times, maybe even actually go out on a swimming date, obviously, before she sells the voice to get the legs. Anyway, that's a tangent. But yeah, you know, there's a whole thing right there. Stereotypes, characters, where everybody. That's just another manifestation of identity politics, where we put everybody into a box. And again, I already brought up Kanye, but it's like, come on, the dude. I have no idea how sincere the guy is. I don't know anything about the guy other than that he's married to Kim Kardashian, and he said a lot of wild and crazy things throughout his entire career.
The thing is, I'm trying to remember, because I could have sworn there was like a video or something of Kanye talking about Trump at one of his concerts. I could have sworn he was talking about Trump positively, so I don't know. Part of me kind of doesn't get why everyone's so surprised at Kanye being like MAGA all of a sudden. Like, there's a video. There's a video out there.
Exactly. And here's again, right there, that gets into the whole, no one has a memory longer than 10 minutes.
But actually, now that I think about it, no one really made a big deal about the video either. I'm struggling to even remember the video. Like,
I remember it happening.
How he talked about Trump. I'm trying to remember, was it positively or negatively? I remember finding it weird because it's like, oh, that's a thing, apparently.
Yes. This whole time has just gotten strange and weird in general. But you know, the reason I bring him up is for the reason everyone's bringing him up. At the very least, it shows the willingness of someone to get out of the box at least a little bit, and it's not to be tolerated by some. On the same token, part of me thinks conservatives are a little too willing to be like, you said something I like, come on under the tent. You know, you said one thing I like one time, so come on, buddy.
That's something I've noticed about the conservative side too. I'll admit I've been guilty of it once or twice, mainly due to surprise, like, oh dang, really? Cool. But then it kind of fades, like, and then like sense comes back to you, and then you witness it, and you're like, okay, I should not do that because that doesn't make sense. Because
oh yes, but it's a good thing to see that. It's a good thing when people do get out of their box even just a little bit, even even if it's something simple like Jennifer Garner saying right after the election, hey, at least give Trump a chance. I mean, crazy talk, I know, but let's at least give him 10 minutes to get his feet under him a little bit and see what happens. But and again, that's that whole, and of course she got piled on a little bit, and it's like, no, you're a Hollywood starlet, back in your box.
Yeah.
back where you belong.
Yeah, that happens to a lot of people in film in general. Like and that's another thing I've always found interesting too with all this stuff going on is they're more than happy if you step outside of the box, but you step outside of the box they want you to step outside of.
Exactly.
So else, then you're not. That's why I've always found it interesting when people who behave like that say, love yourself and people should accept you and this and that when they don't even fully accept or fully act upon that belief.
Yeah, no. The tolerance brigade. Oof, least tolerant people ever. And of course, that's almost a whole other conversation about the nature of tolerance.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, does tolerance mean I don't like what you do, but you do you over there, I'll do me over here, and we'll be cool.
Mine.
It's like, is it that, or is it tolerance means I love everything you do? Because we treat tolerance these days as I love everything you do. Yeah. Absolutely, everything you do is the greatest. I'm so tolerant. Whereas, no, tolerance actually kind of means the former. It's like, no. It's like, no, I don't like what you do, but you do it over there, and I'll do it over here. And hey, you know what? If you want to get together and chat about it, I'm cool. Yeah. But it's tolerance doesn't mean tolerance does not equal condonement.
Yeah.
But you don't tolerate a thing you like. Obviously, you tolerate something you don't like.
It makes me think of a really good quote, which again is to a topic that's a whole nother episode. But I still love it, and it makes me think of that. I disapprove of what you say about offending. If you're right to say it, it's kind of mindset essentially.
Yes.
That's like, in a way, that's like the epitome of tolerance.
Yes, exactly. And I wish I could remember exactly who said that quote, but
many contributed to fun fact. Many contributed to Voltaire, but it's actually Evelyn B. Hall who wrote a book on Voltaire.
Oh, okay.
And the quote is actually based on Voltaire's beliefs. So it's kind of like a more, not modern, because the book she wrote, I think, is kind of old, but it's a translation of his beliefs, basically.
Okay. All right. I mean, that makes sense. And yes, I think I had heard of it being attributed to Voltaire in the past. And but somehow I knew that wasn't true. I just got to remember who it actually belonged to.
Yeah.
But it's an absolutely perfect quote and does sum up tolerance perfectly. And again, should sum up a way forward to getting out of identity politics and this morass we're in now with discourse. And I don't know, how do we get out of here? How do we get out of this place before things get really stupid?
Well, I kind of have what might be more so considered a pessimistic view, but I have a feeling things are unfortunately going to blow up before they get better. Because that's one thing if that's anything I've learned out of life in my short life so far, is things always get worse before they get better. And I think you see it now. Things just keep getting crazier and crazier. Like, honestly, I thought Charlottesville was gonna be the tipping point, at least leading up to the tipping point, and it just keeps building and building and building. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm concerned to see what this constant buildup is going to lead to. I mean, I know things are going to turn around in the end, but at the same time, it's really concerning.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I thought for sure, actually, after that freaking, at the very least, Nazi sympathizer guy ran over that poor girl with that car, I was like, oh crap. And it's like, all right, batten down the hatches, people. It's about to get real. But fortunately, it didn't. In fact, it was almost a pullback. And at least in terms of actual stuff happening out there on the streets and everything, things seem to have simmered down.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is great.
I can't even recall the last time there was a violent protest.
Yeah, there's still been protests. You can definitely find them. There are still some people getting roughed up here and there, but it's nothing unlike the citywide storefront smashing, burning level that we've seen in the past. That we saw, especially in the immediate aftermath of the election. Yeah, to even think of aftermath after an election. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Why should an election have an aftermath? Come on.
Yeah.
But is it a calm before the storm, or is it just this is quieted down? But and again, more conversations that could easily follow, where there seems to be a ramping up in other corners of things.
I was actually gonna point that out. Like the violence and stuff seems to have calmed down, but if you look at issues involving like free speech and stuff, that just seems to be intensifying and
Yeah.
like Count Dankula and it just when it's not one thing, it's another, and it's just and yeah, I think in a way this is a calm before the storm, but it's not stopping. It doesn't seem to be calming down anytime soon.
No. I remember, and this is oft quoted, and this might be about the last thing before we wrap things up here. Oft quoted thing from Morgan Freeman. There's an old 60 Minutes interview where they're talking about the interviewer, I can't remember who it was, doesn't matter, asked Freeman about Black History Month and everything and racism, and Freeman went on to talk about how it's like, no, I hate Black History Month. I think this is stupid. I think this is bad. The guy in the interview was genuinely surprised. He's like, wait, what? He's like, well, do you have I don't know. I'm primarily Dutch, so do you have a Dutch History Month? Well, no. And the interview was like, well, how do you suppose we get rid of racism? And Freeman's like, stop talking about it. Stop making a big deal about race. Period. Just stop making it an issue, and it will be at least much less of one. I guess my question for you is, do you think we're past the point where that's possible? Where actually stopping to talk about it would be helpful? Or is it like, no, we've gone too far and the only way out is through?
Potentially both. I think we kind of have to. We definitely have to go through what's happening now, but maybe potentially what Morgan Freeman was talking about could be part of the solution, and I think that's definitely possible to be part of the solution, and it definitely be good to do, to just stop looking at each other based off of skin color. But yeah, it's definitely a combo. We have to go through this storm, go through this cultural shift. Which cultural shifts, if you look throughout history, they tend to meet an extreme before they calm down. So yeah, we have to go through it, but we also need to take things such as not looking at each other as based on skin color and just stop talking about it as part of the solution. But there's also things we have to do to fix the problem, because the problem was complex to begin with, and all this stuff going on now has only made it even more complex to solve.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with any of that. Then, let's just hope, and for those who are so inclined, pray that things settle down before they get crazy, because that's not anything anybody wants to see.
Crazier, and before we have any more deaths like we had in Hartsville, or we have any more imprisoned because of a joke or wrong thing.
Oh yeah. That again, we'll have to have you on to talk about that sort of thing.
Because free speech is like one of my most deep, most passionate issues to talk about, especially as a writer. I think it's highly important to support free speech, even speech you think is absolutely disgusting.
I couldn't agree with that more. In fact, honestly, Crystal, I can't think of a better note to end it on. That we just remember that no matter what, we've all got the right to express ourselves, no matter how horrible think someone think it is that someone's saying, or and just again remember to start looking at each other as individuals, as the guy sitting next to you on the bus, as opposed to black people and Asian people and Hispanic people and white people. All that does is divide us further, and nobody wants to see nobody wants to see what the ultimate results of that are. If anything, and focus again on Martin Luther King's dream. Go back and read the speech. It's a fantastic speech, and remember what he said. What was his dream? His dream was that one day the ancestors of slaves and the ancestors of slave owners would be able to, be with each other, to interact with each other as just a part of normal society, as not even going, hey, your great grandpappy used to be a slave. Your great grandpappy used to be a slave owner. It doesn't even come up. Why? Because we all see each other as individuals. We all see each other as people equal under the law. We all see each other as equal children of God, and that's it. It doesn't need to be anything more, anything less than that. And Crystal, before we wrap up, is there any place you want to tell people they can find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Crystal, 3 capital I's, and you can find me on Instagram by the same username, Crystal, 3 I's. And I have a website titled betweenworldswriting.wordpress.com. All
right, and you can find me on Twitter at Gingerman Editorial and gingermaneditorial.com as well for my website, and also on YouTube at Fighting the Void. And of course, the podcast is on SoundCloud, iTunes, and probably others in the near future. So until next time, be well, stay safe, and we'll see you later.